Much for do. Second.
Noted.
All right, Lucinda, thank you for doing that and hitting the button. Christine, thank you for reminding me that's what I was supposed to do. But I think before we get much further along, we have a new face. Ian, and would you introduce yourself, or Christine, would you introduce Ian and tell us a little bit
I was
about...
going to do exactly what you just did and just say we're excited to welcome Ian as a planner too here. He's going to be working on all of our housing programs, and then I was going to kick it over to him to introduce himself, what his background is, and what he'll be working on here.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. I don't know many of you, but my name is Ian Baxter. I'm a recent graduate of the Batten School. I graduated with my MPP in May, and I have a little bit of experience at the TJPDC. I did my final sort of thesis on behalf of them regarding the home consortium, as well as my mandated internship here last summer. So I'm a little bit acquainted with things that are going on, but there's a lot of things I'm not acquainted with, one of which being the Regional Housing Partnership for now. But yeah, going forward, I'll be, taking this, I'll be the primary contact for this, and really looking forward to getting to know you guys and accomplishing some great work. So yeah, good to see you guys.
Mandated, that's kind of a strong word.
He was,
right?
I wanted to say he was mandated to have an internship.
I don't know why I said that.
Like,
yeah,
really?
required's a better word than mandated.
Ian, I'd kind of give up before you start digging yourself a little bit deeper, buddy.
And then
how could we not be so famous you didn't know of us before joining?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm questioning the hire at the moment. I'm questioning it.
Don't do it.
No. So unfortunately, Ian, you'll be working with me a little more than you wish to do. So that smile might change here to something else rather quickly.
And then Keith, for Ian's benefit, can we do like a quick 2-minute round and everybody introduce themselves and where they're from, so that he also can,
Good. So let's see. Greg, you're next to me, so we'll start with you, Greg.
I'm Greg Powell. I have an architecture firm, Powell Studio Architects, and a lot of our practice is focused on affordable housing. We have clients like Habitat and Piedmont Housing Alliance and others.
Anthony?
Hey, Ian, good to see you. Yep, Director of TJAC, homeless programs.
And a guy who wears a beard real well, just like you. Margaret?
I'm very slow to unmute, but I'm the director of the Nelson County Community Development Foundation and the rural representative on this team here. So very nice to meet you, and come out and visit us sometime.
I would encourage all the breweries and vineyards and stuff like that. Brandon?
I'm not promoting alcoholism.
I am. Brandon?
Well, hey, I'm Brandon Collins. I'm an organizer for the Public Housing Association of Residents in Charlottesville, which is the resident council and resident advisory board. I think on this body, however, though, I'm just a low-income resident of Charlottesville. And that's how I am on this body. I'm a lifelong resident, and welcome to TJPDC.
So my name is Keith. I am the commission representative, the treasurer of the commission. I represent Fluvanna County. My wife and I are in the real estate space, been in the real estate space for 35 years. So I've come from that kind of a background. And unfortunately, fortunately, I'm the chairperson, but unfortunately for you, I'm the chairperson. And I'm trying to figure out, are you in the office or you're calling from your home?
I'm at my house right now.
Good. All righty, guys. So thank you,
Can we do
Christine.
Stacy? Can we have Stacy, since she's going to be here on the agenda anyway, also introduce yourself?
I apologize. Stacy is not on the screen. So Stacy, I apologize. Stacy, could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Stacy Fathia. I am the Housing Policy Manager for Albemarle County, and I am fairly certain we have met before.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to teach Keith how to go into group view. Speak.
Thanks, Greg.
Gallery view.
That would be the button that says gallery view. Would that be
Yeah.
the one, Greg? Got it.
And the order you see on the screen is different for every one of us. So the fact that we're left or right or up or down is not relevant to anyone but yourself. FYI.
And you're saying that like it matters. But thank you, Greg, for keeping me straight. I apologize. Stacy, you're on the other screen. So thank you, Greg, for teaching an old dog new tricks. Appreciate it. So next item up is comment from the public. Unless there's any on, I do not. Do you see any public folks? Okay, great. So we'll skip past that. The next item is the consent agenda. So that's the minutes from the June 9th meeting and the financial update. Any thoughts or comments or edits? And if none, I'll accept the first and a second and we'll vote.
Move to accept.
Thank you, Greg.
Second.
Thank you, Margaret. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand. Aye. Thank you. It passes. A little bit of adjustment of the agenda here, folks. We're going to drop out FY 2022 budget from the conversation. Christine and I had a conversation earlier. There's some things in what's happening that we feel that it would be better to bring it to the commission first before we bring it back to us for further discussion. Christine, does that kind of summarize it in general, or would you like to add something to it?
No, it's just if we're going to make an ask of our local governments for a contribution to one of the PDC programs, we like to have the commission's support in reaching out to their jurisdiction. So we would like, they didn't have a meeting in July. That's a month they don't have a regular meeting scheduled. So we'll bring it to the August 5th meeting and discuss it with them and make sure that the direction that we're going is the direction that they would support in getting them to help reach out to their, fellow board members and council members to get some funding for the RHP.
So I think we were getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, and so we just want to bring it. I'll bring it up to the commission and Christine in August, and then we will bring it back in our next regularly scheduled meeting. All right. Any questions or thoughts on that before we move on?
The only other thing I would add is, in the packet was a draft letter that's just a preliminary set of thoughts of what we could put into a letter for an ask of all of the different sectors, nonprofit, public, private, and citizens. UVA was the fourth one for these letters. If you guys have any feedback on that letters, I'm happy to take it. You can just send it to, you can send it to Ian directly. I love being able to say that instead of sending it to me or Lucinda. And we'll keep your thoughts on that letter for after we meet with the commission if they have anything additional, and then we'll put it all together and bring it back to this committee.
Not to belabor this point, is it belager? I don't know. Belabor. Thank you. Is it mainly just a question of how much is being proposed from the localities? The whole approach?
No, Anthony, it's more of a sequential thing. Where the jurisdictions are about ready to receive requests from organizations like us for the 2022 budget. So if we ask for a little bit of money now and then have to ask for more money, so we're trying to bundle this into one ask. Is that a relatively straightforward shot, Christine? Did I capture that correctly?
Yeah, and I think the way we had been moving forward is to do a one-time ask for this current fiscal year, and that's off of their budget cycle. We've heard a little bit of feedback that it would be a lot easier to get support if we put it into that fall. It's the same funding request that the nonprofits have to put in. As an outside agency, we have to put in our requests to the local governments for our per capita funds and any programs that they support, the regional transit partnerships, solid waste, hazard mitigation, all of those funding comes from the local government through a request that happens this fall. And so we'd like to go to the commission and talk about whether it's best to do this one-time ask for FY22, or if we can have a discussion about a potential recurring funding allocation that they would be willing to support the RHP on an annual basis versus a one-time payment. And we didn't feel like asking them those two things back to back within a month was appropriate. And so we really want the commission to give more direction and support on this.
Cool. I appreciate the context. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts before we move on? So thank you, folks. You know, we'll bring this back in greater depth at the next regular scheduled meeting. So thank you, Christina, for bringing this up earlier today and getting on it pretty quickly. So we're going to strike that from the agenda. So the next item is the speaker series and upcoming RHP events. And it looks like Stacy and Lucinda will be covering that for us.
Yeah, so we don't have a lot to update since the last meeting. The committee did not meet last month. We took that time off. We do have a list of potential topics that have been suggested for the fall series, and those should be included in your packets. I'll be honest, totally forgot what this list was about until today. So I don't know how many of these we started working on already. But these were topics that came through a variety of sources. Some came through RHP members, some came through elected officials. Some were proposed in the surveys that we send out to participants afterwards. And if, as you look through those, if any of those stand out to any of you as being more important than the others, or something that you think that would be a good focus for the fall series, please let me or Ian know now. After you used to saying that. That's really where we are, to be perfectly honest. There is a recommendation to do some sort of training about the various funding sources that are out there. So home, community development, block grant programs, and the compliance measures that are required under each of those. So it would really be about how to apply, which ones you can apply for as yourself, as an agency, which ones must be applied for through a local government partner, what the compliance requirements are behind all of those. And that is something we are looking into set up in the future. That is all I have on that. Did I miss anything?
So if any of you would like to add to that list, can we make suggestions to you, Stacy?
You may.
Okay.
Anthony, did you have a question?
To make a suggestion,
Yeah.
the new financial opportunity center / housing hub would be, I think, a great one of those to describe what it is, because it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. But it's also such a great new resource, especially, and I was thinking of it especially in consideration of the housing locator update and how that hopefully is going to integrate. And I know that kind of requires a lot of kind of work behind the scenes, but even if that's not fully fleshed out, I think it would be great to have a discussion about the housing hub. So wanted to make that suggestion.
That's a good one, and I could see that partnering with the porch light discussion, but yeah. Also, and I highly support this one. So I'm gonna make a push for this being one of the sessions in the fall, is to really get updates from each locality about the different initiatives that are going on. I think that would be really helpful for everybody to hear, and I can see that fitting into that discussion as well. So that's really it. We're gonna pick up the meetings again next month and start working forward on this. And I don't have any more information unless anybody else does.
One question I have is, what's a discussion amongst the committee members about doing the next in person? I'm getting a bunch of feedback from particularly elected officials from other jurisdictions on how successful the one is that we did. I know we have a potential Delta variant coming in here that might skew some of this stuff, but we're looking like a year down the road kind of thing, or
we felt things were not stable enough to pursue an in-person event this fall. We did discuss possibly in the spring, but given how much time it takes to really throw those together, I think potentially next fall or summer. But we have not talked about it beyond testing the waters. Things are too up in the air, Keith.
I just, when I'm asked, I just want to have an answer, that's all. So-
Yeah, no. And I think we all want to be able to do that again, because the first one was really successful, and it was really, everybody really liked that. And I think it's important to provide opportunities for everyone to come together in person. A lot of good conversations come out of that, partnerships are formed. So we do want to get back to it, but we need to make sure that we're all going to be safe when we do it. So
the answer is midsummer, fall 2022. We'll keep you posted. Minimum.
correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and as soon as, can I add, as soon as that committee has a further discussion on this, it'll be pretty important for us to begin to reserve the space about a year out in advance. In 2019, we got very lucky with having a Friday open, but if you guys recall, I think it was Good Friday. It may have been a holiday, which is why it was available. And so if we can put a reservation down on a space, we can make sure that the contract has some language in it about, the availability to cancel due to, public health concerns. But if we can at least put a down payment and a reservation down, it'll help us out with getting a date that we prefer.
Right.
So we'll talk in the committee about that.
Any further questions for Stacy or Lucinda on this? Greg?
If someone wants to pursue agenda or suggestion 1, please reach out to me. That didn't come from me. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think that might have been my idea. There's a lot of good work, and I did not realize at the time that you were working with 2 faith-based groups on housing projects, but there is a lot of good work coming out across the country with different faith-based groups pursuing affordable housing projects. So I thought that would be something that could be really useful here, particularly because of the smaller projects that are happening locally and how to make that bigger. But yes, we will reach out to you, Greg.
So Ned, thank you for joining us. So to bring you up to speed, we took the budget off the agenda today. We could talk offline a little bit about it, but there was a conversation with Christine and myself and Jesse about bringing this back to the commission first and have a conversation with them before we brought it back to continuing the conversation with us. So if to fill you in the details, if you reach out to me offline, I'll fill you in on that if you don't mind. Okay, Virginia Housing Grant and Strategic Plan. That has my name next to it, but it really should have said Christine. This is something I'm super excited about. I think this will help grow this committee or this organization and moving it forward. It's time for us to do a larger strategic plan, and I believe we might have the funding for it too. So no,
We're hopeful. We were hoping, and it's on the agenda because we were hoping we'd be able to tell you whether or not we got the award. We anticipated a decision by the 26th. In reaching out to them, they're going to be making the decisions by the 31st. So I'll know by the end of the week if we received that grant, and I can update you guys via email when we hear that. But as soon as we hear award, if we receive that grant, we already have the consultants ready to roll. They're just waiting to hear from us that we've received it, and then they can start the process and get us rolling for a set of stakeholder meetings and interviews and kickoffs and all that stuff that comes along with that funding.
And I'm assuming that would be one of Ian's new jobs. Lucky you, Ian. You thought you were just going to slide right in here and have a nice, easy thing. Hey, Ned, do me a favor. Would you introduce yourself to Ian? He's one of the commission's new employees while you're here.
Ian, good afternoon. I'm Ned. I am from Albemarle County, the Rio District Supervisor there, and Keith's this body's vice chair for one more year, right? All right.
One more year, sir. One more year.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All righty. Anything else we want to add to strategic plan, Stacey? Christine, excuse me?
No, I mean, I think we just have to, I was hoping we'd be able to have more. We just have to hear the award and then we can trigger notice to proceed to the consultant.
So while you're up, The next two items, legislative update and executive director report. Would you want to tackle them?
ED report I can, legislative is not me.
I
Ned,
know that-
have we done anything in the last month for legislative, or is that something we just need to push?
I mean, this was the idea of, I was thinking something in the fall where we could put something together that with, being that it's an election year for, especially for some state folks. And I said I'd spearhead that, but I have nothing new to update since the last time we talked about it. It seemed like nobody had any objection to it. So I think it's something that could be pulled together with minimal effort, as long as, and I'm certainly willing to help do that.
Well, Ned, I'm here to help, so just reach out in any way that I can help. So,
Right, you need to start thinking dates, and I'm thinking like an evening, or, you know, just do a little forum that this body could host and go from there.
any feedback on that from anybody else?
I don't want to make like a candidate thing, like a question, you know, like a debate type format, more just a round table. Like we do these round tables, and make it more discussion. Town hall can maybe kind of forum, give us a chance to maybe advocate for our what we're stand for, but provide maybe a forum for others to speak to the issue. Might be interesting.
I think that was really, really worthwhile. That said, I'm not the expert.
Well, we need to educate the candidates or the elected officials on how they can help us and who we are. So I think it's
Yeah, and sort of moving out from there, I mean, how coordinated are efforts with TJPDC and the localities and their legislative agendas? That'd be good to know if there's help needed with that. And, you know, should we
Yeah.
be looking to sort of herd everybody at some point, make sure we're all paying lobbyists to do the right things?
Yeah, and we, as you guys know, because he came and spoke to this group, David Blunt on our staff works with each of the jurisdictions on their own platforms that includes housing. So he is tapped into what everybody else is doing. There was some discussion on not necessarily like whether or not it needed to be a regional platform. And I think what we landed on was more of this roundtable discussion that you were talking about, Ned, and that rather than duplicating what's already happening within the local jurisdictions, doing it more as a share and a conversation with the officials.
A little bit more informal, more in depth. All right. Any other thoughts from anybody else? Ned, thanks for spearheading that. Let us know what we can do to help, and we'll move the ball forward.
Maybe we should, since this is July, will Christine pin me down to having a more specific game plan for, all right, I need coffee. Thank you. For August is what I'm saying. Let's get me a deadline here.
That's the reason that I was trying to stop by and see you the other day. Not to buy a car, but to talk scheduling. All right. Anything else, guys? All right, cool. Christine, you're up next.
Yep, Executive Director's report. As you all saw through our press release, we were awarded $2 million Virginia Housing Development Grant. It's a pretty big deal for us. This will be the first time the PDC has engaged in housing development outside of any planning processes. So we're really excited about this initiative. This is also something that Ian is going to be the lead on here at the TJPDC. It is designed to create new units. It cannot fund units that are already in the development pipeline. So it has to show that it is not already receiving funding from a lot of other sources, but it's a newly developed program. We are thinking, however, we're going to pull together a group to think through it with us, but we're thinking this will be done through a competitive RFP process that we will put out to nonprofit, public, and private developers in order to see what types of projects we can get that meet some of the regional needs that we've identified through all the data work that we've done through the regional housing study and plan. each million that's awarded, it's required that at least 10 new units are created. So for our region, it means a minimum of 20 new units. We are thinking that the Regional Housing Partnership is the right body to form a committee that would review the RFP, would review the proposals that would be received and make a recommendation for the commission on how to allocate that funding in the region. Our timeline, you know, the grant is a 3-year grant. So we have 3 years until the units have to be built and move-in ready. The first 8 to 12 months of the grant were designed to be for planning. So we have a pretty ambitious goal to get the RFP completed and a development partner selected by the end of the calendar year, beginning of next calendar year, sometime around December, January. But as you can imagine, since it's such a new grant from Virginia Housing, as they're receiving questions from all of the planning district commissions, they're adding like addendums to the contracts as we think of things through the process of, can you do this? And what about that? And what does this need to happen? So we're still learning about the grant, and we're going to continue to just share with you all as we learn more about the grant, how it can be used. But then we'll put it out for a process so that we can come up with a partner and move forward on it. Do you guys want to do questions on that one before I move forward? Does anybody have questions? I figured, yeah.
We got hands up.
Yep.
Greg, you go first if you don't mind, sir.
So you're speaking about a partner.
That's right. The way that our agreement with Virginia Housing is written is if you are a planning district commission who has never developed housing before, then it is a single partner that you can contract with. If you have done development before, you can have multiple projects simultaneously. So you can have multiple partners. This is exactly one of the things that they're trying to refine for us as everybody brainstorms what they want to be doing, and they're taking it to Virginia Housing to see if it's eligible. So we anticipate hearing more about that. But the way the agreement is written right now is that we would partner with one development partner. It does not specify whether that has to be one site or scattered site or within, you know, different parts of the region, but it does say one development partner.
Christine, do they? Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Stacy.
Stacy was next, if you don't mind.
I just wanted, but you said it's a 3-year grant, so the project has to be completely built.
Oops, did I laugh? Sorry.
Okay, just checking.
Which is why, even though it's written that we can spend 8 to 12 months in the planning process, we are trying to be pretty ambitious about getting a plan early. So that we know from the beginning, we have as much time as possible to get those, you know, units in and keys turned over.
Come on, Stacey, housing things move through our county with a great alacrity, speed even.
Not necessarily on site, though. Finished units, I'm hearing.
I'm just thinking you just need to have a shovel-ready project. So I mean, whatever planning process approvals needed to happen need to be done before they even apply for the award. That's where my brain was going.
Anthony?
I was wondering if the state has suggested or provided any metrics to use to determine or to, you know, for the competitive process, or is it just completely left up to you all to determine that process?
We've asked for guidance on that, and they are on a case-by-case basis providing samples that could be adapted for the local or the regional needs. So they are not going to identify those metrics, but they're happy to be a thought partner as we identify them. And that's where I'd like to use a committee of the RHP to determine those metrics.
Ned, did you want to add something to that? Or so you are requesting for a committee to be formed of this body or the whole body?
No, I think it's going to have to be of a select group, because what we want to ensure is that no one on that committee is also potentially an applicant. So we want to avoid any conflict of interest where that group would be making selections of the proposals if they are also an applicant for the same funding.
So it sounds like you directed that towards me because I'm also the chair of the land trust to do that.
Actually, I didn't direct that towards anybody. I think there's several people even
Yeah,
on
there's
this
a lot of us.
call that would be potential applicants.
Or service providers to potential applicants.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to
let-
say. It's like kind of be hard to find someone who
Yeah.
doesn't have.
Yeah.
Well, and
Why-
the other thing we can do is we can split that into two separate processes where we develop the RFP and we come up with those metrics with a broader group. And then we refine who the selection committee
Yeah,
is to make sure that
makes
it
sense.
doesn't. Mhm,
That would be the right approach.
right.
So
maybe it's
that,
just maybe Brandon's the committee. Well, no, Brandon's also a conflict of interest. Yeah. I
And
didn't think
then
about that.
let me also share this with you. In one of the meetings that we had with Virginia Housing, we've asked for an opportunity to meet with the other PDCs and to continue an ongoing conversation with them about how they all plan to use their funding, just so we can learn from one another. And there's been a lot of really creative ideas. So Virginia Housing is setting up a recurring meeting, and I can bring back to you all and to the group. It doesn't have to be a competitive RFP process either. There's a lot of other ways that this funding can be used. I think we're just so early in the process that we want to pin down what all their requirements are and what the guidelines are, and then pull a group of people together to start thinking about within those guidelines, how can we move forward?
so let's pick this apart a little bit. So we need an initial committee. It could be anybody who's on this call, right? And then we're talking about creating a actual funding or selection committee that is not anybody on this call, because every one of us has a conflict of one way or another. So who wants to be on it? I will be on it as the chair for sure, but whoever wants to join us, please, let's kind of toss that around. And then how quickly do we need to do this, Christine?
We still don't have the meeting scheduled with Virginia Housing for our kickoff with them as grantees. So I don't think this needs to be immediate. I think we need to hear more from Virginia Housing. I also think, Keith, it might be valuable to reach outside of just the executive committee. I think there are other people in the partnership that would very much like to join in that conversation.
Cool.
Yeah, I was going to
So maybe
suggest that
if
same thing.
Yeah, I'm in.
I know you guys are as anxious as I am to get this started, but perhaps we hear more from Virginia Housing, and then if it's not if it's before the next executive committee meeting, we'll reach out via email to ask for folks that are interested in gathering to talk through next steps.
But I'm working it backwards, right? If I understand this correctly, we have to have a shovel-ready project? Is that, do I understand?
No, we have to have units built and move-in ready 3 years from the date of award.
So that means we need to be looking at shovel-ready projects. That we need to be looking at projects that have been rezoned, went through their entitlement process, and at the barest minimum are in some stage of development at this particular point in time. So a year from now, they've got lots ready. Is that what I'm hearing? Greg, does that make sense to you?
I'm not, being private sector, if it's put in the private sector's hands, we can build it in 2 years, not 3. But, it depends on who the partner ends up being. What Virginia Housing does for their LIHTC, you have to have fully entitled property as a go, no go. But you do not have to have a site plan approval, for example. You certainly do not have to have a building permit.
But if
And
we're
in
looking
that
at,
case, you're presenting a very detailed concept, including a fixed cost estimate for a specific project to be funded. But I would say that's not shovel ready yet. In our jargon, it's about a third the way through construction documents. So we still got some construction documents and building permit to do after selection, but that normally is 6 months out of the 3 years or 2 years.
well, I can add a little context to that. The project that we did on Nassau Street, and Stacy was great help in that. I had in my brain we'd be able to do this in 6 or 9 months, and I was wrong. And it took every bit of 1.5 to 2 years, and we had lots ready to go through the entitlement process and build and deliver. we had to consistently extend our date with Stacy, which she was great enough to do for us, so we could deliver on time. So this is going to come up a lot faster than everybody.
Yep. And I fully intend that the Regional Housing Partnership is the right body to be, helping the PDC through this, barring they would be making recommendations to the commission for the commission to make final decisions. But again, I would love to hear more information from Virginia Housing and be able to give you guys a full picture. I've been in contact with other directors of PDCs just to have an idea of where they're leaning, what they're thinking they're going to do with this funding. And there's ideas anywhere from mixed use development in their downtown area and relocating their PDC office there with housing above, all the way to thinking through whether or not a housing trust fund would be eligible under these guidelines, to somebody partnering with a community land trust just to do land acquisition, to land banking. I mean, the ideas are all over the map because this grant is so flexible. And so as everybody brainstorms their ideas and brings them back to Virginia Housing to ask about the eligibility of their idea, they're expanding their guidelines and providing more direction to all of the grantees so that we can better inform our own decisions. So as soon as I get more information from Virginia Housing, I fully intend to bring it to you all to help us stand up this program, because it's going to be a big lift for the PDC.
So do we think that's going to be available by our next meeting on the 25th of August?
I sure hope so, but I also thought we'd get a Virginia Housing Grant Award notification before this one. So I mean, I can only hope.
Understood.
It would be very helpful to have a couple of draft RFPs from other sources to help kick that off.
Yep. Agree.
Anything else you want to add to that, Christine?
I have other items for the executive director's report.
Okay,
Does anyone have any other questions on this item? No. All right. Bert, the PDC has been collaborating with a lot of housing groups in the area that do eviction prevention, and we were awarded a DHCD Virginia Eviction Reduction Pilot Planning Grant. So it's a $50,000 grant to create a unified plan for better coordinating eviction services. This one is specific to Albemarle and Charlottesville. The planning grant, we're contracting with a couple of different consultants. The first one is the UVA Equity Center. They are going to be doing a 3-year database of eviction data in Charlottesville and Albemarle so that we can better understand our evictions in this region, or specifically in the urban areas, but within Charlottesville and Albemarle. They're going to be looking at, as you know, in the court records, where people, do they have counsel? Is it their first eviction? You know, how many evictions are done by each landlord? So it's really just trying to get a better idea of the data so we know what the needs are. The second part of the planning grant is we have a consultant called Knowledge Advisory Group, woman-owned business. They are going to be doing interviews and reviewing the policies and procedures and programs of all of the agencies that do eviction prevention in the region. And they will then be developing a work plan for how to better coordinate. They're not going to be advising on what individual agencies should do related to their policies or programs, but how those programs can better communicate with one another and how they can work more in a coordinated approach within the city and the county. And then the third part of the VERT planning grant is the City of Charlottesville's Human Services Department is doing focus groups and reach outs in order to create a landlord outreach plan for how do we better engage landlords in the process to help them better understand and to prevent more evictions, knowing what the data tells us once we get results from that data. Anybody who received a VERT planning grant, and I keep saying we like PDC, but really this is a large effort of many different organizations. I think the advisory group for this one is 26 people strong. You know, it's Charlottesville and Albemarle public sector, but it's also a lot of the nonprofits. It's the legal aid. You know, it's a really coordinated effort for everybody to try to better serve our population that are at risk of eviction. And then anybody that applies for the planning grant is expected to apply for an implementation grant. So the PDC would then apply when that grant becomes available. They're saying late fall, early winter for an implementation grant. And that's to do the work to coordinate those services. And those awards in the past, last year, they half of their funding for this pilot was last year, and awards for the implementation grant were anywhere from 200,000 to just over $1 million. So we'd be able to apply for that for this second round. They're anticipating the same amount of funding being available. So we'll keep you guys posted with that. That advisory group is meeting at least once a month. What we told them is they'd be meeting once a month. We may need them more than once a month once we get closer to the end of the grant, but that's because both of our consultants are requesting workshops with that group, so they can really be hearing as much from the service providers as possible. Any questions on VERP? Anthony, did you want to add anything? I know you've been engaged in that process also. Does anybody want to add or ask questions as you eat your lunch, probably?
I am eating lunch, I'm sorry. That's why I'm in and out. Just that it's an amazing opportunity, and I think it dovetails really nicely with the housing hub. Obviously, we have homeless prevention services and have had homeless prevention services in the homeless system of care for a while, which are an important piece of the puzzle. But frankly, you know, as like a data point, let's say we get 10 calls for homeless assistance, anywhere from half to 7 of those calls are really people just like trying to avoid eviction. They're not really homeless yet, and that need is large. And you know, thankfully during the pandemic, we've had a lot of rent relief programs, but having a more coordinated opportunity to really look at all these services in the community is like a great way to pull it all together. So I'm excited for that, and it's nice to also have that in parallel with homeless prevention, because if that fails, then we also have something to prevent homelessness, which is what homelessness prevention is really targeted for. It's not really targeted to actually prevent eviction, which is a common misconception. It's really trying to prevent people from entering a shelter. So anyways, it's nice to have that, because a lot of times it's been used to prevent eviction as well. But it's a good opportunity to coordinate a lot of good resources that are existing in our communities.
And then also, just to add a side note, Ian will be the lead on the VERP as well. So he'll be doing all things housing here at the PDC. So if any questions, please reach out to him directly, and we'll work as a team to get you any answers if we don't have them. Brandon, did you have a question? I saw you put your camera back on. No, okay. And then the only final share that I have, which is a much smaller one, but it's still very exciting for us, is we got $3,000 award from the BAMA fund. So that $3,000 will go towards helping us fund the educational series that we do, so that we can cover some of the staff time for putting on those webinars. That's all I have.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions or comments for Christine before we, oh, looks like Stacy's got one.
It's more a comment, really. I don't know if any of you know, HUD has released a notice of funding availability for their eviction prevention grant program. They have $20 million that they will be awarding. They anticipate awarding 20 grants out of this, so $1 million grants each. And applications are due on September 8th. I did share this with Legal Aid Justice Center this morning. But state governments, county governments, city governments, nonprofits that provide eviction prevention services can all apply.
Is it for direct service agencies?
Let me see.
I can also look it up.
Is this the final program that the planning grant was made for, or no?
No, this is different.
Different, okay.
Yeah, no, the planning grant is through DHCD, and it sounds like this one is HUD.
Yeah, this is federal money. I will have to look again, but I don't want to read through this while we're all sitting here, but I will share I'll send you the NOFA.
I mean, I guess while we're talking about other programs, I don't have a ton of information. As a matter of fact, I have a 1.5-page letter, and that's it. But obviously our region, through the home consortium will be eligible for up to 2.4 million in one-time funding. It has very specific criteria for the populations that can be served. It's not necessarily to continue our existing home program. So it is to support people experiencing homeless, at risk of experiencing homeless, fleeing domestic or sexual violence. There's a whole series of categories of who it has to serve. We don't know anything about the funding other than we can request it through the Home Consortium's annual action plan. So it has to be a revision to the annual action plan to request that funding. This is a really good catalyst for us to begin really digging into our home consortium. Ian's work here when he was doing his applied policy project for Baton was to look at the home consortium and how we have it structured, and do some policy proposals on what are some adjustments that can be made to how we use our home funding to be more efficient and more effective. We also have an intern currently working for us that's been doing research on how other consortiums, what their governing structures are, how do they allocate their funds when they're a multi-jurisdictional consortium like we are. So it is going to be a massive undertaking. HUD and home are both complex programs in that, like, the manuals alone to make sure that you're following all the regulations that change over time from year to year are complex. I think, Margaret, you can speak to that, but we're putting a significant amount of staff time right now into analyzing our program, comparing it to others, and then coming up with potential proposals for, is there something different we should be doing with our region's home funding? Not to commingle those two things, but there is home ARP funding that will be available. We just don't have any program guidelines at all. We just have an award letter that we will be eligible for those funds. Because of those funds, we are now going to take the staff time to make sure that we're digging into that program, and for a couple of different reasons. I think one of them is our own internal audit to make sure we're following the regulations. I think the second one is to say, is there a better way to use this? Right now, our home funds, and if I'm going down a rabbit hole, you guys can tell me, I just want to share, but our home funds right now, a certain percent has to be set aside. It's required to CHODOs, community housing development organizations. There's an administrative set aside, and then the remainder of the funds, the consortium can identify how to allocate those funds. Our consortium agreement with HUD, which was written in 2001, has that funding split equally between the 6 jurisdictions every year. A lot of consortiums do not do it that way. They do it any number of ways. It can be a competitive RFP process or notice of funding availability. It can be each jurisdiction gets all of the funding in 1 year and it rotates across their jurisdictions. There's several ways that the consortiums are set up. And so this is triggering us to really do a deep dive into our own program and look at some opportunities to make either fine tune or broad stroke changes to our program to make sure the funding that we have available gets out the quickest it can in the most efficient way to where the need is the greatest. So it's going to be a big lift, but it's something we're really committed to doing because our home program has not been adapted since 2001.
Thank you, Christine. Anybody else would like to jump in? Any thoughts, comments on any of that before we move forward? I'm trying to wrap the meeting up a little early, folks, here. I personally got a 3 o'clock that I got to get to. And I'm sure everybody's day is a little busy here. Is that it, Christine? Anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, that's all I had.
Great. So we kind of did a brief intro. Normally we do, Ian, so that you know, normally we do a roundtable. But we kind of done that while we were waiting for folks to come on in. And since Mrs. Smith says I have a 3 o'clock appointment, I have to probably jump off here in a little while. But before I do that, anybody want to chime in on anything that's going on in their world that they feel that should be shared? The only thing I say, it's not a public record. I know this is a public thing, but keep an eye out for the press on Friday. There's a little bit of a partnership coming out that'll hit the press on on Friday that I've been working on for a couple of years, which will be super exciting for this, for what we're trying to do here. And anything else, guys? Anybody?
Keith,
Lucinda?
can staff chime in?
No.
Well, I just wanted to say that it was really great working with all of you and on the RHP, and I'm going to miss you guys a lot. I'll still be with TJPDC just on transportation, which was my original topic. So, but it's really nice to meet you all, and it was a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you, Lucinda.
Thank you so much.
I apologize. I did not, even though I didn't put 2 and 2 together. So I personally want to say thank you. And whatever Lucinda says is not true, unless it's good, and it's very true. But thank you, Lucinda. I appreciate it. You always stepped up, late night phone calls, texts, and stuff like that. So thank you very much for all of the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from anybody?
I just was going to say Stacy's got a housing policy approved by our board.
Woohoo.
Step 1.
Excellent.
That's a huge step. Thank you, Stacy, for all the hard work that you've done.
I'm working on my side too, so.
Hey, how's that little project going, that affordable housing project going?
It's coming along. It's coming along. We've starting to do site plan sorts of things, and then we've got to kind of do the hard work and figuring out who's going to pay for what.
Money thing always gets a little difficult.
Yeah, that's sticky stuff. So
Money makes people funny.
it really does.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for it. You keep us posted. I know Jesse's been talking it up big time. So
Yeah, he has, huh?
well, at least to me, he has.
Interesting.
Oh, we have to talk offline. Maybe he's telling me one thing and you something else.
No, he's super supportive. I mean,
Well,
considering
okay.
we could not be farther apart politically, he is very supportive of I'm not sure about this project, but affordable housing in Nelson County, he understands the need. So, I mean, and just if we can get, the supervisors to add to our strategic plan that we're working on this year, to add that chapter, that this organization has put together. I mean, I think that's going to be such a, even if we never build another house here in Nelson County, which is not the way it's going to be, affordable housing maybe, but.
An interesting Nelson County thing. I was listening to NPR on the way in today, and Nelson County has the lowest COVID rates of any county in the state of Virginia. Did you know that?
Because nobody goes outside anymore, or they are going outside and not staying inside. We fought really, really hard to get shots here. We had shots in this building. We had shots in Nellie's Ford. We have a very old population, so everybody was super concerned about getting their inoculation. So I think we're at 70% for the county. So
Huge
for
number.
a very kind of not necessarily blue county, bringing politics back into it, I still think we have a really high. We've been very careful in the schools too. So
I was trying to give you some kudos.
oh, thank you. I think I'm taking credit for it all.
Of course, as you should.
Yes.
And that actually sparked me, Margaret. I cannot believe I was remiss to not put in the ED report section, but the regional housing plan will go before the commission in their August 5th meeting for their review and hopeful adoption of the regional housing plan.
In Nelson?
In the TJPDC commission. So
okay.
our commissioners will
That's
review it
huge.
and then hopefully adopt it as the regional plan.
Okay, perfect.
Anybody else like to add anything before I ask for an adjournment? No? Going once? Going twice? Sold. Guys, thank you very much for everything. We're going to adjourn today. We will see everybody on August 25th. If not, Greg, are you waving goodbye, Greg, or you got a question? Waving bye. Got it. All righty, guys. Take care. Have a great day. Thanks for everything.